Hello, welcome to County Connections. I'm your host, Michael Sweigart. County Connections is a production of Wayne Net and the County Commissioners to promote Wayne County as a great place to work, live, and play. Today we're going to be talking about agriculture in Wayne County and how that benefits Wayne County and how you benefit from that. We have a couple of guests today. We have Phil Jordan and Dori Baxter, and we're going to be talking about both sides of agriculture in Wayne County. Phil is a large producer here in the county, and Dori is a smaller producer, more focused on the community and local food movement. Phil, Dori, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'd like to start with just a general question, just to give some of our viewers an idea of who you are and what you're involved in. So I'm going to ask if you just give us a 1 to 2 minute brief description of yourself and your operation. Phil, let's start with you.
Oh, well, like I said, my name is Phil Jordan. My wife and I and our family reside in the Boston area. We are farmers. We produce. We have a pork operation that's close to Boston. We grow corn, soybeans, and wheat, and we're all very actively involved. We've been farming for a lot of years. It involved my grandfather and my father, brothers. I mean, some of us aren't around anymore. My parents are deceased, but you know, the family's continued on with the operation, and we've grown it over the years.
Mm-hmm. So you basically have a large family farm then?
Yes.
Okay. And Dori, you and your family are farmers as well. And tell us a little bit about you and your operation.
We run Abundant Acres Farm, my husband and our 2 children that are still at home. And we do CSAs, which is Community Supported Agriculture, which is a fairly new movement of local food, and we provide local packages for them every week. And we raise meat chickens and do goat milk shares. And we've been doing this for 3 years. We've been on the farm for 10, but really been a quote-unquote farm business for the last 3 years. So really into the local food, organic type of farm.
Okay.
A little different, a lot smaller than than Phil.
A lot smaller, but both have their place, and we have a need for both types of operations.
Yes, definitely.
Locally and nationally. Now, they're both family farms, but we're looking at 2 kind of different types of operations. And Dori, you said you've been in the business for about 10 years, and in the biography information that I got from you before, you started out with just selling a few eggs, and that kind of grew. And how did that get started for you?
Well, we had a daughter in 4-H. That's where a lot of it begins. But we just started with a few chickens, and people knew we had eggs, and they started coming up wanting eggs. We started, raising a few meat chickens. They found out we had them. Hey, can you raise a few for us? And we did that for about 7 years, and finally, and growing vegetables. Hey, you have a little bit of extra green beans, this kind of thing. And we thought, why don't we just make this a business, and start doing a lot of research on what community-supported agriculture was, and really felt that would probably be the niche that we could use for the size we are, because we're 15 acres and we farm 5.5 of that ourselves. So, and from there it just kind of took off.
Okay.
And so, not a real glamour story, but exciting at the same time.
Right. Right. It sounds very exciting. And Phil, you on the other hand don't have a lot of direct-to-market
That's right.
operation there. You're a much larger operation, and so tell us a little bit about how that works for you.
Well, we produce corn on our farm, and we dry that corn, and we end up feeding the majority of that to our pigs that we grow on our farm also. We do a lot of things in-house, but we still have to rely on a lot of other people to help us do what we do every day. And there's a lot of the feed manufacturers that have to supply certain parts of the feed that we just can't produce. But we do produce our pork. As a matter of fact, this morning we sent a trailer load or a semi-load of pigs to over into Indiana to a packing house, Indiana Packers, that buys a lot of our pork right now. And so it keeps us kind of lined up to meet that schedule each week to supply those animals to the market. We don't deal directly with the public in the sense that Dori and her family does, but you know, we do have to work with a lot of suppliers, and we depend on a lot of people to help get the job done that we have to do every day.
And then your soybean production, you sell that off to the grain markets as well?
We sell that off to the grain markets. The pigs do require a soybean meal to be used in the ration, so it supplies a lot of protein. But the whole soybeans that are grown on the farm are not suitable to be fed. There's an enzyme that's involved in the soybean that has to be removed. And so we send our soybeans to a processor at Sidney, Ohio, Cargill, and they process the soybeans and turn it into soybean meal, and we'll go with the semi and pick up a load of soybean meal and bring it back to the farm and mix it with our corn that we grow, and then with some other ingredients to make our feed. And presently we're batching about over 20 tons of feed a day to feed our livestock.
Wow.
20 tons of feed a day.
That's incredible.
Dori's like, our farm doesn't produce 20 tons in 2 years.
That's what I was thinking.
But to keep things in perspective, I mean, we're still a family farm, and we're still really, by the scale of a lot of farms today, we're still a small farm. I mean, there's the big corporate, the mega farms, and we certainly don't fit that category.
Right.
But we need to do a lot of the things that they do to stay competitive, because if we can't have stay competitive on a cost basis, we can't survive.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of what I'm hearing here is that farming is a business, and that's something that I think a lot of people who are not familiar with farming don't really think of. You know, when they think of family farms, they think of dad and his son and maybe a daughter and maybe a wife, going out and slopping the hogs and running the tractor around for good times, and not really
Right.
working at it too hard.
Yeah.
It's something that you do if you can't get a job. But in reality, farming is big business, whether you're on the scale that Phil's family is or Dori's family. It's a business. There's an activity. You've got income and outgo. And one of the things that I'm hearing as well is, Dori, your farm keeps local money local. When people buy from you, that Wayne County money stays in Wayne County and gets recirculated. Whereas Phil, when you sell your pork and grain off to the market, that brings money into Wayne County. And
Right.
so we have two ways to stimulate economic development in Wayne County through farming.
A lot of the other corn that we produce, and a lot of the other farmers in the area that produce corn, a lot of it gets sent to the ethanol plants, which we have two pretty close to here. We have one at Greenville. They produces 110 million gallons of ethanol a year, and then there's one at Portland that is doing maybe 60 million gallon a year. And the one at Portland's using over 22 million bushels of corn a year to produce that ethanol, and all the corn in Wayne County only amounts to about 9 million bushels. So you can see it is big in the scales that are needed.
Yeah, that's almost hard to wrap your head around. Just for those of us that really can't do that, give us an idea, how many bushel baskets would it take to make 1 million pounds of corn? I mean, just roughly, are we talking semi-loads full of those?
A million, well, a bushel of corn's 56 pounds
Wow.
of corn.
So we're talking like 2,000, 20,000? Yeah.
Don't ask me to do the math.
Don't do the math. But it's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it would take up a fair amount of Glen Miller Park if we were to stack them side by side. Yeah, that's a lot of corn. So, Phil, in your farm operation, do you employ people outside of the family to work on your farm?
We have some. We have a lot of family labor, but we also employ other people. And I saw a figure this morning about in Wayne County that there's, and I wrote this down, there's about 490 people that would be considered hired, just hired laborers for the farms in Wayne County. And the payroll for those people would amount to almost $2 million a year. So, okay. But that's just the people that are physically helping out on the farm. There are so many other aspects of farming that you don't even think about, like the transportation, the trucking that is required, the people that are in the banking that help, make the loans for the equipment. There's just the crop protection people, the fertilizer dealers, just
the grain elevators.
The grain elevators. It just goes on and on. The people that are kind of help support agriculture. And we can't do this by ourselves. We have to have the seeds, and we have to have the things, the inputs, and some of the fertilizers that we need to make all this happen. And that's where agriculture just kind of snowballs and gets to be really a pretty big deal.
One of the complaints that I heard a smaller family farmer here in Wayne County register lately was the idea that people are wanting to live in the country, but they want the conveniences of town life, so they're building subdivisions on what was farmland. What do you think as an impact on family farms that kind of activity has?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm thinking.
Well, there's certain aspects of agriculture that maybe people that maybe haven't been around the farm can, be offensive from time to time, the odors or the dust and the noises, and maybe a tractor out there in the field, early in the, late at night or something that maybe people that maybe wanted to get that house out in the country didn't really think about too much. But I can see where that can cause some problems, and that's where some of the zoning is important. I think we need to maintain, agriculture. They need to have room to operate and do what needs to be done. It was written, I just read not too long ago that the world food output has to double by the year 2050 to maintain the amount of food that's going to be required. And that's not very long, and that's an awful lot more food that we're going to have to produce. And Dori's operations were the smaller farms. That's going to be a part of it. I think that people can get out and have gardens and buy some local grown produce. I think that's wonderful. But it's not going to be the total answer.
Right.
And there's been kind of a clash, I think, and I think it's because people are getting more and more removed from the farm. They used to be, they knew their grandfather or somebody that owned a farm, and they would go to the farm. Maybe not so much here in Wayne County. I'm talking about in some of the bigger metropolitan areas. They just don't really know what agriculture really is anymore, and they just think that it's big and bad. And but there's reasons that are, for the things that we do, and a lot of us to keep the cost of food low, so more people can afford it.
Right.
And
well, with the bigger farms, and you talked about corporate farms earlier, there's an economy of scale that comes into play. It's much easier or much less expensive per acre to grow 1,000 acres of corn or green beans than it is to grow, 100 square yards of that same grain. I mean, the costs that are involved in establishing that gets spread out. You reach the economies of scale. We were talking a little bit before the show about people knowing where their food came from, and I gave you a little anecdote about my niece who discovered where hamburgers came from and how that impacted her. But I think that there is, especially in the larger metropolitan areas, a disconnect between people understanding that when they go to the meat counter at the local grocery store, that's not where the meat started.
Right.
And that's not all that's involved in it. Your production of pork in particular is affected by that. You know, you just don't go up to the meat counter and somebody goes in the back and pulls out a, you know,
Well,
a
and
pork chop.
and who knows how to slaughter pigs anymore or butcher, you know, in their backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still some people that do that, but I couldn't do it.
Right. Right.
Wouldn't
there are
wanna
very
do
few of those.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it either.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Right.
But you do some meat chickens.
We
And
have a
so-
processor do that, though.
You do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's rules and regulations with the health department,
Mm-hmm.
and we could do it, but for our own safe measure, we feel more comfortable having a processor do it to know that they're cooled down properly and bacteria isn't growing. And we thought about doing it ourselves, but
Just an extra headache that.
yeah, it's you have to decide what's worth your time and what isn't worth your time, and is there somebody that can really do it quicker and more efficiently than you can, and we felt that was one area that we would benefit from. So,
Okay.
but I think the local food, the disconnect, I think people are becoming more aware of that, and I think that's why you see the local food movements growing. They're learning more about what's being done to their food,
Right.
and I think there's a disconnect of that chicken starting from a chick going to the table, but I think they're becoming really concerned about what's going on with that chicken during its raising.
Well, we do have some issues that have played out in the news locally as well as nationally about farm production, large farm operations, and small farm operations as well. And you mentioned the 100-mile radius dinner that you're involved with. And let's talk a little bit about that and how people are becoming aware of where the food is grown and the joys and advantages of locally grown food, and how you relate to that.
Well, the 100-mile radius dinner is a once-a-month dinner that anybody can come to, and the whole goal is to bring your dish that you bring for everybody to be within 100 miles, all the ingredients, as many as you can, within 100 miles. And
So no paste picante sauce.
no paste picante, no, has to be your own, from your tomatoes or somebody's local tomatoes. And it really, it's fun because you don't know what it's going to be brought to the table, and there's this group of people that really appreciate those local foods. And believe me, in the wintertime, it's a challenge. You really don't know what's going to be brought to, to the dinners, but it really starts to bring the community together. And it may not everybody cares about local food, and not everybody is ever going to care about that, but the people that do, we share a common bond. We're of all race, religious, I mean, all different kinds of people are there, but we all have this interest in what we're eating and where we got it from. And it's really, they're fun events to go to, and we've really met a lot of nice people there, people that we probably would never have known if it hadn't been for those dinners. And I think it's something that people don't know about in Wayne County, that goes on every month.
So how can people find out more information about the 100-mile radius dinners?
Well, they could contact Clear Creek Co-op, which is right across from Beaches.
Okay.
They always have that information. They have played a big part in getting that started. And they could give you the email of the people that are running that. And it is a once-a-month dinner, and it has gone all year round so far. So the first year, we just had our 2-year anniversary. The first year we weren't going to go through the winter time. We thought, oh, let's challenge ourselves and do that.
Right.
And it was great. It was fun.
One of my favorite shows growing up, and now one of my kids' favorite shows, is Little House on the Prairie. And that kind of information, that kind of small community where basically everything was local. I mean, they might have gone 20 miles up the road for something that they couldn't get locally, but most of it was local, especially the food. And in winter, the availability of some foods was greatly diminished, without good canning and without good preservation of the vegetables that were raised during the summer, that wintertime diet got pretty restricted.
Pretty bland, yeah.
Yeah, pretty bland. And then we had the farmers, through efficiencies, be able to develop into larger farm operations and larger activities. And then somewhere in there, and I don't know where historically or where in the mindset, but somewhere it kind of got to be, well, they're the city folk and they're the country folk, you know, and there's those farmers out there, and, you know, we'll just get whatever they got off of us, but, you know, we want our stuff year round. How does that play out for you today in Wayne County? Do you notice a lot of that disconnect? I mean, do you get a lot of backlash from people about the operations that you have, or is it more positive feedback? And I'm asking that question to both of you.
Well, we get both. Some people think we're just, you know, kind of off the deep end. You know, we're kind of goofy to want to have local food and not to want to have a lot of chemicals, and we really don't like GMO corn that well, and you know, no offense, but so, you know, on one end we, you know, we're kind of thought of as being kind of goofy, but then other, you know, we get a lot of positive feedback. We're so glad you're doing this. We're so glad we can get good meat and local meat, and they're really eager to support us. So I think there's both, but I think for the most part, it's been really positive for us. A lot of positive feedback on what we're doing. Okay.
We had a big news story about CAFOs. It was really big in the news a couple of years ago, and you have a pretty large operation. And there are some negative effects of large operations. You talked about, you know, the bigger the operation, the bigger the smell, the bigger the dust cloud, the bigger the trucks that are going in and out of the area. How does that affect you and your operation?
Well, we try to, you know, be good neighbors, and whatever we do, we inject our waste products, our manure, to keep the odors down. Not to say that there's not going to be from time to time that you're going to have that, and that's part of, it just kind of goes along with agriculture. But yeah, you hear about that, but I'd say the most part, most of them are very, very well managed, very run. There's several right here in this county. Young people that have do small aspects of it. They may just put a finishing barn up and finish the animals out from, say, when they're 3 weeks old up to market size. And, you know, they're doing a tremendous good job. And I think there's some bad press that gets put out, and a lot of it's is some unfounded fear from time to time. And I just think that, you know, the farmers need to do a better job of trying to communicate and meeting with the public to alleviate their fears. You know, we just all have to do a really good job, and we got to work at it all the time.
Earlier you mentioned, Phil, the amount of food that's going to be needed, the food production capacity that's going to be needed to feed our ever-growing population, not only locally but globally. If we eliminated some of the large market operations, would we be able to feed our communities?
I don't think so. It would certainly be a major realignment. I don't know. It would certainly raise the cost of food and probably limit access and availability to a lot of people. I don't know how many people that we want to starve, and I think we need more food, not less. I also feel like that we've got the best, safest, cleanest food supply here in the United States as there is anywhere in the world. I think, yeah, are there problems? Sure. Could we do a better job? Sure. There's always rooms for improvement. But when you think about the amount of food that's produced and the people that are fed every day, 99.9% of the time we're getting the job done. And people, we would all probably benefit, maybe, and I know I'm guilty of it too. We need to make maybe some better choices in some of the products that we choose to buy. There's no doubt maybe some of the ultra-processed foods are not in our best interest to eat those. And I think a lot of that's come about because of convenience. I think in a lot of families you have the husbands and the wives, they both work. They come home, they're tired, they want something to eat quick, it's easy. And that's why that market exists. It's not that
And the
the
convenience.
people are producing the products and here forcing it on them. I think that's what that's what they've been buying.
Right.
And so that's why the market's there. And I think that if more people could maybe, I know it's hard, you know, food preparation. I mean, I don't do any of it. My wife does, but I see that it takes a lot of time
That's
to
right.
do that, and it's an
Right,
effort. And
right. And you're just talking about preparation, you're not even talking about the production of it, not, you know,
Yeah.
growing it and gardening and so forth. Well, let's bring the show to a close here. We're running out of time. It's been a really interesting conversation that we've had so far. I really appreciate that. But I want to give our viewers an opportunity to make a connection. And so I'm going to give you each a chance to give some connection information, some contact information, if you would like, about how people can learn more about what it is that you do. And Phil, I'll go ahead and start with you. I know that you have a farm south of Boston, but you're not a direct market.
Right.
If people wanted to learn more about your operation, what would be a good source for them?
Well, they certainly could be welcome to call me or my email. I can
Okay.
supply the email address.
Go ahead and give that to us.
My email is philljrdn@aol.com.
Okay. All right.
I'd be
Great.
glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. And Dori?
A couple different ways you could find out about us would be through Clear Creek Co-op, which is right across from Veach's, wonderful, kind of the forgotten store in town. Well, I shouldn't say that. They probably wouldn't like that, would they? It's
No.
an up and coming great store. Or at Baxter Dori, BAXTERDORI at AOL.com.
All right.
So,
And thank you both for coming, and we wish you much success in both of your
Okay.
operations.
Thank you.
For the benefit
you.
of yourselves and for Wayne County. Thanks for being on our show. And thank you for watching this week and this show again. We appreciate your supporting County Connections. We will have contact links from our website, waynenet.org/cc, where you can get links to both of their email contact information and some of the other contacts that we've discussed on the show, the CSA movement, the 100-mile radius food banquet that is a monthly event, and so forth. We encourage you to do your part as well to make Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play. As our guests have done today, invested here in Wayne County, we encourage you to do the same with your time, your money, your resources. And be sure and check out some of the activities that are going on as we're coming into the late summer, early fall season. We will have some special events going on at the Wayne County Fairgrounds and throughout the county, and we encourage you to engage and participate in those as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next month.